It's like we're building our society from an Etch-a-Sketch. We were given a solid foundation and a warning of what dangers to avoid. At some point, someone came along and drew dicks all over our Etch-a-Sketch. We are afraid to lose our work, for it had such potential. But it is dead. It has been hijacked, and we need to shake it clean. George Orwell stated that the best books are the ones that tell you what you already know. 1984 will tell you what you already know, that there is something very wrong with our culture. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. These were the three slogans of Ingsoc, the totalitarian party which controlled the superstate of Oceania in George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. These slogans were precisely chosen to create cognitive dissonance in the citizens' minds. Each slogan uses words directly contradictory to one another. It was a concept known by party members as doublethink, to hold paradoxical views of reality simultaneously in your mind. You are asked to completely disregard your own perception and be completely dependent on the state's definition of reality. If the party needed you to believe that 2 + 2 = 5, then you have to find some way to resolve the fact that you know it equals 4. It is not just enough to say the words. The party was very sophisticated in observing when you were faking it. You needed to actually believe when a party member holds up 2 and 2 fingers, you are truly seeing 5. Furthermore, if the party puts you in a situation where 2 + 2 must equal 4, for the sake of science and practicality, you must find a way to resolve these two paradigms as the party saw fit. Sometimes the answer was 5, sometimes it was 3, and sometimes it was all of them at once. The party specifically denies that such a thing as the truth even exists. The objective truth is whatever suits their needs at the time. Ingsoc controls all records, all memories of past events, and they control your entire reality. There would be no loyalty, but loyalty to the party. There would be no love, but love for Big Brother. The validity of the human experience and the very existence of external reality itself was denied by their philosophy. The greatest of all heresies was common sense. And the most terrifying thing about this proposition was not that they would kill you for thinking otherwise. What was truly terrifying was what if they were right? For if common sense truths like 2 + 2 = 4, or the existence of gravity, or that the past is unchangeable, if these ideas exist only in the mind, and the mind is controllable, what happens then? The truth becomes whatever those in power want it to be. The way this manifested in Orwell's nightmarish reality was this. If someone you knew disappeared, they were no longer a person, and in fact never existed. Any record of them was wiped out. Any memory you had of them was false. It was your imagination, and speaking about them could lead to your own sudden disappearance. The state of Oceania had two main rivals, Eurasia and Eastasia. Whoever they were at war with in this moment was who they had always been at war with. Even if you had a memory of being at war with Eastasia 4 weeks ago, right now, we are at war with Eurasia and had always been at war with Eurasia. Any piece of news that had ever said otherwise was altered. Anyone who spoke to the contrary was a criminal. When the planes hit the two towers on 9/11, it was very clear what we needed to do. We needed to find who was responsible and crush them. Osama bin Laden was responsible. Osama bin Laden had always been responsible. This led to an all-out war in Afghanistan. Afghanistan had always been behind the terror attacks on 9/11. So as the war with Iraq waged on, we knew they had always had weapons of mass destruction. We all knew we had to rid this evil, totalitarian country of these weapons. So as the war in Afghanistan continued, we came to the realization that Iraq never had weapons of mass destruction. But this was okay. That had never been the reason for going to war in the first place. What Iraq really needed was a regime change. Whoever controls the present controls the past, and thus controls the future. Those who control our history books are able to control our perception of the past. Like most kids in America, I was taught that no matter which war we were fighting, the United States was on the side of God, truth, and justice. But history proves to be much more complex than our linear way of learning in schools allows us to understand. Every historical subject we learn gets condensed into a narrow lens, usually portraying and imposing on us a belief of American exceptionalism. God's chosen people who have been burdened with the task of enlightening other cultures of their primitive ways. In the 241 years since 1776, the United States has been engaged in some type of war for 224 of them. War, in reality, by definition, should be something that inevitably comes to an end. There is a clear enemy, we fight, we go until there is a clear victor, then the war ends. The wars between Oceania, East Asia, and Eurasia were not battles over resources. War was enacted to keep a labor force within its own boundaries. In Orwell's novel, by becoming continuous, war has ceased to exist. Each world power stockpiles atomic weapons and points them at each other, planning and plotting for the right moment. Of course, this moment never comes, and the leaders of Ingsoc never want it to come. None of the three powers ever attempt any maneuver which involves the risk of serious defeat. In this way, vague battles and wars are being fought. It could be true, it could be a lie. The citizens of Oceania have no way of knowing. The real truth is that each superstate is nearly identical to one another, with only slight differences in way of life and ideology. This is why each superstate does not want to conquer one another. If you were to conquer a new territory, what would you do with its people? You could either have a mass genocide, or you can assimilate these people into your own society. That would be almost unthinkable. If the residents of Oceania actually mingled with the enemy that had been propped up for so long, soon they would come to realize that they are more similar to themselves than they could have ever imagined. In Orwell's reality, war is waged by each ruling class against its own subjects. The object of war is not to take or prevent conquest of territory, but to keep the very structure of society intact. A hierarchical society requires a certain way of thinking, particularly a feeling of scarcity and lack, that straying too far from the herd will result in death. When war becomes literally continuous, there is no such thing as military necessity. The war becomes merely an imposter. It becomes like a battle between two animals who have set their horns at such an angle that they are incapable of hurting one another. This is not to say that many people won't die. Certainly they will. But the foundation of these superpowers' way of life is never in danger for even an instant. Though it is just an act, it is not meaningless. War eats up the surplus of consumable goods, and it helps to preserve the mental atmosphere that a hierarchical society requires. A state of perpetual war has become nearly identical to a state of perpetual peace.
We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace. We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace.
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time.
We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace.
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
We must declare war on war, so the outcome will be peace upon peace.
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen.
Throughout recorded time, there has always been three types of people: the high, the middle, and the low. They have been subdivided many ways, borne countless names, but the essential structure of society has never changed. Even after enormous upheavals, the same pattern has always reasserted itself, just as a gyroscope will always return to equilibrium. The aims of these three groups are entirely irreconcilable. The aim of the high is to remain where they are. The aim of the middle is to overthrow and change places with the high. And the aim of the low, if they have an aim, is to abolish all distinctions and create a society where all are equal. Thus, a struggle which maintains the same basic outline recurs over and over again. The need for a hierarchical society had always been the doctrine of the high. It was preached by kings and aristocrats. The high had promised you safety and security, and all the riches available in the next life. All it asked in return was everything, all of the riches in this world. There are 4 ways in which a ruling class can fall from power. Either it is conquered from without, it governs so poorly that the masses revolt, it allows a strong, discontented middle group to develop, or it loses self-confidence and willingness to govern. A ruling class which could guard against all of these would remain in power permanently. The high, realizing history was a cyclical process and that the middle and low would always try to usurp their status, chose to find a way to maintain their position permanently. This new group of high was more conscious of what they were doing and more focused on crushing their opposition. This new group of high realized the only way to keep an oligarchy intact was through collectivism. A society needed to exist where the greater good of the group always had priority over the individual. One of the main mistakes these groups made in the past was the forming of an aristocracy. The privileged few flaunted themselves. They had slaves. They made it very clear that they were the high and we were the low. Once the high had an overwhelming amount of resources, the middle would inevitably enlist the low to overthrow the high, usually to a violent end. The key to success needed to be secrecy and shadowed intentions. The new oligarchy, the one that can actually maintain their status as the high, will have to learn how to hide their true aims. Today, the high are no longer people. They are corporations and institutions. Institutions which are too big to fail. They become something like the Federal Reserve. The very name a brilliant act of doublethink. It would suggest to an observer that they are beholden to the federal government and that they hold the reserve of our currency. In reality, they are not a part of the federal government, nor do they hold any reserves. They are a nameless, faceless, shape-shifting entity with no loyalty or ties to anyone or anything. Nathan Rothschild once said, "Give me control of a nation's wealth, and I care not who makes its laws." Once you have gained complete control of a nation's wealth, you can then plaster the face of a big brother who is always watching you onto every TV, every street corner, and in every home, while the high remain truly anonymous. Through collectivism, the high are able to keep up the illusion that we have not been enslaved. People are not productive when we realize our enslavement. Our human spirit compels us to break free of our masters. And furthermore, when you knowingly enslave someone, you don't want to educate them, for they may use it to turn against you. So you are only able to take advantage of the muscle of your human farm, and not the most valuable asset, their mind. Give them the illusion of freedom. Let them choose their job, where they want to vacation, and how they want to spend their free time. They will choose a job that is safe and secure. Though they have the ability to go as far and for as long as they want, they will vacation where countless people have gone before and will always return home when they are told. And inevitably, almost all our various forms of entertainment will merely become a way to numb our senses. Give them the illusion of choice and they will imprison themselves. Thus, freedom is slavery. In 1984, the Ingsoc Party was in the middle of implementing a new type of language called, quite creatively, Newspeak. It would take time, however, to replace all the unnecessary Old Speak words with the more useful, efficient Newspeak words. Words that meant the same thing were thrown away. Why did words like fantastic, ecstatic, and amazing exist when they could be covered by the word good? If something was better, it would be double good. Something bad was simply ungood. Language was simplified as much as possible. The goal of the party was to have any idea divergent from the Ingsoc doctrine literally unthinkable. All ambiguity and shades of meaning were purged out. Newspeak was designed to limit the range of thought, and there would be no room for philosophical discussion. In a world like this, how could one fight back when the thoughts and words of a revolution couldn't even be thought or spoken? While the police officers' club was a vital tool of control for the state, language was more powerful than brute force could ever be. So the problems that arose were naturally problems of education. The old system of vocabulary allowed for too much deep thought and too much questioning of authority and the current way of life. Words, in their correct form, will always retain their power. Naturally, it followed that the schooling system needed to be an institution of indoctrination. So if we look at the structure of oceanic society, we can assess the dangers which may threaten our totality of power. At the apex of the pyramid comes Big Brother. In the eyes of the party, he is infallible and all-powerful. Every success, every achievement, every victory, all knowledge, wisdom, and happiness and virtue are held to issue directly from his leadership and inspiration. Below Big Brother comes the inner party, with its numbers limiting to 6 million or something less than 2% of the population. Below the inner party comes the outer party. Below that comes the masses, whom we habitually refer to as the proles, numbering perhaps 85% of the population. In terms of our earlier classification, the proles are the low. Let us look again at the 4 ways in which a ruling class can fall from power. After the middle of the present century, the first danger had disappeared. Each of the 3 powers which now divide the world are in fact unconquerable. The second danger is only a theoretical one. The masses never revolt out of their own accord, and they never revolt merely because they are oppressed. From the point of view of our present rulers, the only genuine dangers are the splitting off of a new group of able, underemployed, power-hungry people, and the growth of skepticism in their own ranks. The true problem is educational. It is a problem of continuously molding the consciousness of both party groups. In childhood, an elaborate mental training is undergone and groups itself around the newspeak words crime stop, black white, and doublethink. Like many words in Oceania, they hold paradoxically opposite meanings at the same time. Crime stop means the faculty of stopping short, as though by instinct, at the threshold of any dangerous thought. It includes the power of not grasping analogies, of failing to perceive logical errors, and of misunderstanding the simplest arguments if they are in opposition to Ingsoc. A party member is expected to have no private emotions. He is supposed to live in a continuous frenzy of hatred of foreign enemies, triumph over victories, and self-abasement before the power and wisdom of the party. The discontents produced by his bare, unsatisfying life are deliberately turned outwards by devices like the 2 minutes hate. And any skeptical or rebellious attitudes are killed by his early acquired inner discipline. Oceanic society rests ultimately on the belief that Big Brother is omnipotent and that the party is infallible. But because in reality Big Brother is not omnipotent and the party is not infallible, there is need for an unvarying, moment-to-moment flexibility in the treatment of facts. Crime Stop means protective stupidity, but stupidity is not enough. This new way of thinking demands control over one's own mental processes, as complete as that of a contortionist over his body. The ability to alter the past is crucial for survival of oceanic way of life. It is convenient then that past events have no objective existence, but survive only in written records and human memory. The past is simply whatever the records and memories agree upon. Since the party controls all records, and is equally in control of the minds of all its members, naturally, the past is whatever they choose to make it. If it is necessary to alter one's memory of the past or to tamper with written records, then it is also necessary to forget that one has done so. The trick of doing this can be learned like any other mental technique. In old speak, it is called reality control. In new speak, it's called doublethink. Doublethink means the power of holding 2 contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them, as we have discussed briefly in an earlier section. Doublethink lies at the very heart of Ingsoc. Since the essential act of the party is to use conscious deception while retaining the firmness of purpose that goes with complete honesty. To tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them. To forget any fact that has become inconvenient. And then, when it becomes necessary again, to draw it back from oblivion for just as long as it is needed. To deny the existence of objective reality, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. And so it goes on indefinitely, with the lie always one leap ahead of the truth. Ultimately, it is by means of doublethink that the party has been able to control history, and may be able to do so for the rest of time. This linking together of opposites, knowledge with ignorance, is one of the most important marks of oceanic society. If the high, as we have called them in this video, are to keep their places permanently, then the prevailing mental condition must be controlled insanity. The party is not a class in the old sense of the word. It does not aim at transmitting power to its own children. Hereditary aristocracies have always been short-lived, whereas adoptive organizations such as the Catholic Church have sometimes lasted for thousands of years. The essence of oligarchical rule is not father-to-son inheritance, but the persistence of a certain way of life, imposed by the dead upon the living. The party is not concerned with perpetuating its blood, but with perpetuating itself. Who wields power is not important, provided that the hierarchical structure remains the same. All the beliefs, habits, tastes, emotions, and mental attitudes that characterize our time are really designed to sustain the mystique of the party and prevent the true nature of present-day society from being perceived. Any move towards rebellion at the present time is not possible. From the proletarians, nothing is to be feared. Left to themselves, they will continue from generation to generation and from century to century, working, breeding, and dying, not only without any impulse to rebel, but without the power of grasping that the world could be something other than what it is now. It is here that we reach this central secret which lies at the very heart of Ingsoc way of life. Doublethink is merely a tool of control. At its heart, what drives the party is the will to power. Power, not unwillingly seized, not for a limited time, and not in attempts to create a human paradise where all are free and equal. No, we are different from the oligarchies of the past. The German Nazis, the Russian communists, they came very close to us in their actions, but they remained too cowardly and hypocritical to recognize their own motives. We are not like that. Power is not a means, but an end. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power, not wealth or luxury, or long life, or happiness. Only pure power. It is time for you to gather an idea of what power means. The first thing to realize is that power is collective. The individual only has power so long as he ceases to be an individual. You remember the party slogan, freedom is slavery. Well, it is reversible. Slavery is freedom. Alone and free, the human being is always defeated because every human being is doomed to die. But if he can make complete, utter submission, if he can escape his identity, if he can merge himself into the party so that he is the party, then he is all-powerful and immortal. Are you beginning to see the kind of world we are creating? It is the exact opposite of the stupid, hedonistic utopias that the old reformers imagined. It will be a world of fear and treachery and torment. A world of trampling and being trampled upon. Progress in our world will be progress toward more pain. We have cut the links between child and parent, between man and woman, between man and man. There will be no art, no literature, no science. There will be no distinction between beauty and ugliness.
In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated.
It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex.
We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
And remember that it is forever. The face will always be there to be stamped upon. The enemy of society will always be there, so he can be humiliated and defeated over and over again. Traitors and their heresies will live forever. Every day they will be defeated, ridiculed, spat upon. And yet they will always survive. The drama that has been played out will be played out over and over again, generation after generation, always in more subtle forms. Perhaps you have returned to your old idea that the proletariat will arise and overthrow us. Put it out of your mind. They are helpless, like animals. You are beginning to realize what this new world will be like.
But in the end, you will do more than understand it. You will accept it, welcome it, and ultimately become a part of it.